Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Holocaust Remembrance Around the World, sponsored by the Emil A. and Jenny Fish Center for Holocaust and Genocide Studies at Yeshiva University. I am Lois Roman, the producer of this series, in which we find people all over the world that are shaping and reshaping Holocaust memory and education. Today, we are traveling to China to speak with Professor Xu Xin of Nanjing University. Professor Xu Xin is the chair of the Jewish and Israeli Studies and the dean of the Institute of Jewish Studies at Nanjing University in China. He's also president of the China Judaic Studies Association, editor-in-chief and a major contributor of the Chinese edition of Encyclopedia Judaica. He's authored so many books, I can't mention them all here. We are so honored to have him with us today. Welcome, Professor.
It's my pleasure.
How much do regular Chinese students learn about the Holocaust in their history courses? Obviously, the ones that come to your program are learning about Jewish studies, but in the regular population of China, are they learning about the Holocaust and what happened to the Jews?
Yeah, well, let me make it clear. The Holocaust education started as a part of Judaic studies program in China. We at the beginning we said when China opened up, and then after the first 10 years, more and more Chinese scholars, intellectuals who were sent abroad to study and came back brought new ideas, reality of Western world. Among this, they mentioned Jews. So that's why Chinese start to restart Occidental studies in Chinese universities. Basically, young people or the laymen in society are getting information from those group of people who wrote articles, books. And so that's how Jewish study started. With Jewish studies started with that, we talk about anti-Semitism. Occidental studies need to study of Jewish studies. Jewish studies need to anti-Semitism because the people want to know, for instance, why Hitler hates Jews, why Hitler killed Jews. People, they don't know exactly, but they talk about it. You have to answer that question. You see, people like me who made myself into this field and knows what we need. That's how, besides history of Jewish diaspora in China became one of my research fields. The other field was anti-Semitism, actually, because a lot of my friends, colleagues, when they learn I'm in Jewish study, they always ask that question: why Hitler killed Jews? Why this? You see, then we have to answer this. So when you study anti-Semitism, then you come to Holocaust, because the Holocaust is one of the extreme issue if we look into anti-Semitism. So that's how it comes. So anti-Semitism, Holocaust study, part of it. Like I mentioned, the Jewish survey course, I mentioned not only Chinese Jews, but also about Holocaust.
Okay.
Yeah, anti-Semitism and the Holocaust. Though we only spend 2 weeks talk about it, it's because one whole semester is about 16 weeks, how we divide it into this. But Chinese people definitely are interested in this, and there were books in 1995. There were 2 books published about Holocaust. It's about the deaths of 6 million in Europe. And also there were other books like Wing of the War by Jewish author Herman Hall.
Yes.
were translated into Chinese.
Ah.
I remember I read that book. I learned more about first time Holocaust. You see, that's how. Then there was movies and exhibitions, and China tried to like improve their relationship with Western countries, also with Jews. For instance, Jews also want to promote good relations with China, especially on behalf of Israel, because China did not recognize Israel and in the late 80s. And for instance, Simon Wiesenthal Center in the United States played an important role because it's a science. You see, because I'm already in that field since 1988. I'm already jumped into the field of Jewish studies. I quit my trained field as professor of English language and literature. And I do this. I figure I watch very carefully. So Simon Wiesenthal Center and then movie Genocide, first time showed up in Chinese television system, though it was showed around like after 10 o'clock, but that's still hit. It's a science, the impact, because people know Kissinger, who opened Chinese door, was a Jew, and many other things already mentioned. And Simon Wiesenthal later on prepared an exhibition we called Courage to Remember. It's moving. It was also held in Shanghai in 1990. And also, I brought it to Nanjing. I chose a place, the Memorial Hall of Nanjing Massacre, as a place to hold that exhibition. So later on, Simon Wiesenthal sent a delegation to come to, that was 1993, delegation to come for the opening. And also I invited Israel ambassador, because we established diplomatic relations, they have an embassy in Beijing. The ambassador Sufut came to Nanjing for that event. I could pick up, put in the Nanjing University, but I believe it is important for Chinese to learn why, if I could, use the exhibition of Nanjing Massacre Memorial Museum. And that's a spring, it's a time to mourn the death. And more people visit the Massacre Museum than any other time. I deliberately choose that period of time and get agreement to put exhibition. So it's a big ceremony, and then it was wide covered. Though the exhibition was first held in Shanghai, but in Shanghai you are not allowed to visit to view it freely. You have to visit by invitation. If you don't get ticket, you couldn't go. You see, but in Nanjing, I make it open. You see, anytime you go to the Nanjing Massacre Memorial Museum, you will see this. You see, so 80,000 people use it. I hold it for 6 weeks. Shanghai hold it 1 week. I did for 6 weeks. You see, because that's deliberately to learn this. It is very important because from our view, to have a better understanding of Holocaust study is the best way to promote the understanding of people outside of China of Nanjing Massacre. So I did that in 1993. If you know the story, Irish Chan, who wrote The Rape of Nanking, published 1995. You see, I was 2 years earlier than her. You see, I tried to brought Nanjing Massacre exhibition to America because Simon Wiesenthal said the delegation came and saw for the opening of the exhibition, Courage to Remember, but they saw that Nanjing Massacre, there were many pictures, scenes were similar, identical. That's why they were shocked. They want to bring it to United States. But unfortunately, the political environment will not allow we to take any exhibit, any part of the exhibition to outside of the memorial hall. But now later on will change. But at the time, no. But that still helps. And also, I organized later on in 2005 a course to promote the studies of Holocaust and the Nanjing Massacre. So international symposium of Nanjing Massacre and Holocaust. So I brought those people, those big shot of Holocaust studies to China, like Bauer, Wistrich, Isaac Brown from and many other people I brought, and also I brought the top Chinese scholar on Nanjing Massacre to come for the same conference to have exchange views. That was in 2005. So that's how it comes.
So, so we're almost running out of time, but I always like for my guests to have a few minutes to share words of wisdom. You have personally done so much to change the knowledge base about Jews and Holocaust within China, and you've worked your whole life taking risks and thinking and putting new and innovative ideas together. What message would you like to leave our audience with today?
Well, I believe to understand each other is very important. I had the opportunity to live with the Jewish family to understand the Jewish life, and I believe Chinese should learn this if we want to become the part of the world community, play the role in the world. And so that's who basically consideration. It's bring China when opened up. I brought up in a communist society. I was born before communists took over the power. I was born in 1940s. Then I grew up in the 50s. You know the changes, Cultural Revolution, went to the country Red Guard, and later on went to university and start to teach at the university. We believe China wants change. At that time, we need science, technology. We need investment, the money. And also, by the time I went to United States in 1986, I believe we need new ideas. It was that consideration when I contacted my Jewish friends and learn from them their new thinking. That's ideas. I believe Chinese, if we want to get them modernized, we need them. That's how I devoted to do this, because what I learned to touch my heart deeply. And then that's why I also want to visit Israel. So I went to Israel 5 years before China-Israel established diplomatic relations. You see, not really, people said, may risky, I understand it, but I really want to do it. I said, I'm a professor at the university, I do this from scholarly point of view, should be good. And so I went anyway, and Israel provides the visa. I went directly from United States to Israel. Had I not from United States, I would be able to go. But that changed my mind to visit like Yad Vashem. Jerusalem Post, when I was there, reported to me. Interviewed me. I said, now I understand why Jews want it their own country, for instance. You see, and Yad Vashem came to to the picture. You see, and after I come back, of course, I had contact with. I was in the United States again in 1992 Harvard conference, and on the way back, I stopped in Los Angeles, made an appointment to visit Simon Wiesenthal Center. That's why I established that kind of contact in 1992. You see, and with all the leaders had a good relationship, and also I visited a lot of places, and the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, and I edited the Chinese version Encyclopedia Judaica, which was carried like 16,000 entrants, and I divided entrants was 10% was about anti-Semitism and the Holocaust issue. So that gave me a chance to learn more, and also I was asked to write a book, Anti-Semitism: How and Why. That book is published later on in 1995. Encyclopedia Judaica Chinese edition published in 1993. We started in 1989. It took us 3 years to complete that book and get 1 year to publish. And then I wrote the book Anti-Semitism: How and Why, and published, sold out very fast, and then people interested in this. Later on, I got a state endowment to write another book, actually called Anti-Semitism: Past and Present. It's based on the anti-Semitism: How and Why, but double the size. You see, more deep to discuss things, including Holocaust education. And I must mention the Holocaust education really developed in China. Besides, we teach in our course, we mentioned it. It takes less than 10% of the course time to talk about Holocaust or anti-Semitism. But basically, with a program we ran, we called a Seminar of the Anti-Semitism or Seminar of Holocaust, cooperate with London Jewish Cultural Center. London Jewish Cultural Center, headed by Trudy Gold, especially Jerry Gautier, those people that came to China. It's really by accident. I came to know Jerry Gautier, who actually represent Britain, attended like a task force of Holocaust studies in Europe. Each European country has an official representative, but he is a scholar to attach to that representative. So his mission and was to teach Holocaust education in Eastern Europe. That's why I came to know him. He was in Hong Kong, I was in Hong Kong, and we came together. We had an idea. Then, because I ran seminars of Jewish culture and history for Chinese professors at the university who teach world history of Western civilization, but never mention Jews. Because the reason at that time, they said, when they were students, they never learned. I asked them, if you have a chance to learn, would you willing to include it into your established course at your university? They said, oh, yes. So I gave it a try. I ran the seminar or workshop for that purposes. But by the time I met Jerry, I already ran 3 times. Over 100 university professors came to my workshop, and all taught by Western scholars, Jewish scholars from United States, from Israel. And already ran 3 times. I need a new idea. I met him in Hong Kong. I still think it's a great way to promote the studies, because you have to teach educators. So that's how we do with Jerry. And Jerry, after the conference, I invited to Nanjing. They came and we talked. It works. Then we start to do it. First, we did twice in Nanjing, but then I believe China is so big. Students aiming for at Chinese college students, they come all over the country, costs a lot of money, to do it, but rather to do at different locations, not always at Nanjing University. We suggest them to go to other universities. Every year, pick a university, do this, and students basically from that region, then another region. We did 10 times until, unfortunately, Jerry Gautier passed away 3 years ago. He is something about my age. It's very sad. We wrote a book to remember him. but he played an important role. If there were details about the Jews, and then actually that seminar we ran 10 times in China, over 5,000 people, students at least, went to that place. And because of that, we organized tour with the support of Adner, that Jewish philanthropist who has run a gambling business, give the money in Macau to send every year, pick up 20 Chinese to go to Yad Vashem to attend the seminar there. You see, that's what we did with little Macau and Glenn Zimmerman. If you know that person, he played an important role. And so the Jerry Gotel and those people who were educated, we did a lot of things to promote. And then, of course, there are more movies, especially translation of the books. You see, there are a lot of books about the Holocaust. You see, and we deliberately translate and have them published. And of course, later on, there's a movie, Schindler's List, on some beautiful life. All this was in China circulated to help Chinese have better understanding. And also, we did one thing with Southern University, California, University of South California, UC Shoah Foundation, established by Spielberg. And we did programs to promote the Western understanding of Nanjing massacre, because their work with us, Holocaust Memorial, Holocaust study becomes part of the Nanjing Memorial Massacre Museum. So we taped my student, actually one of my postdoc students by the name Lu Yeming, and then handled all this issue, interviewed over 100 survivors of Nanjing massacre. Unfortunately, those people, half of them passed away just in the last 5 years. But we got their video. Video is available. It's part of my students were involved in this because it's a project we're together with Dr. Smith. He's originally from England, but they came to Shoah Foundation to do this. That's how people talk about Holocaust, and scholars or university students mostly now they understand what Holocaust really means.
I want our audience to understand the long history that Jews have had in China, and how it was that Jewish refugees came to China during the Holocaust. So can we talk about some of that history before we go back and pick up the thread of Holocaust education?
Sure. You have to understand that when we established the Center for Jewish Studies in Chinese higher education, we were the first one being proved. The reason is that China, by then, 1990s, already opened for over 15 years. In the beginning of 1980, China tried to open up and change everything. I was at the university. Actually, I was there since 1977. So become faculty to teach, and we believe to introduce Western Occidental studies is very important. Among them, people realized there were Jewish factors, and especially many Chinese were sent abroad or start to do business, have connections with Western world, and then we come across the topic of Jews, because Jews were very active. For instance, many of my colleagues were sent to America and to various universities to study, and many of their mentors, their teachers, were Jewish. In physics, in chemistry, even this biology, all this, and in humanities, also they come across Jewish teachers. So that's why we believe it is if China want to open up and to do business with the world, to be part of the international community, we have to know the West. To know West, one of the things we have to know was the Jews, because Jews played an important role in Western civilization. And that's how our understanding. I'm not talking about myself. Many colleagues who involved in Jewish studies later had the similar kind of way of thinking. And that's why we believe, especially for personally, I was in the United States from 86 to 88, and then stationed in Chicago and live with a Jewish family who provide me opportunity to understand what Jewish life and Jewish culture or Jewish history, Jewish people in many ways. I remember in 2018, and the Vice President Wang Qishan of China, before he went to visit Israel, came to our institute. He asked me how I studied then. I told them because the situation is that we need to know Jews if we want to do or to connect it with international community. So that's how it comes. Of course, when we do this, we have to realize there were also Jews in China. You see, when I started the Jewish study program, I realized two things I have to pay attention to. One is Jews in China, because I have lots of Jewish friends who will ask me a lot of questions about that. In fact, later on, after I started the program, I went to United States lectures. Many places were talking about Jews in China. And then also friends who come to China to visit. I accompany them to visit China, touring China. Normally, we also talk about Jews in China. So that's something we have to know. Later on, I included part of Jewish diaspora into my established course, which was started in 1989, called the Jewish Survey for college students. That's the first course I established at Nanjing University. Still now, over 30 years, is still being taught. And every semester, lots of students still register for that course. So within that course, I deliberately put one part, at least for one class section, talk about Jews in China. I believe those Chinese students, young people who want to learn about Jewish culture, have to know about the history of Jews in China. So that's how it comes. Because Jews in China come to a long way. And today we talk about the relationship between Chinese and Jewish people. We said at that time, Chinese people, not like Jews, scattered all over the world. We are confined in our territory. But those Jews who came to China make it possible for the first encounter between Chinese and the Jews. So in that sense, history of Jewish diaspora is very important. And it is believed, like if Jews will not come to China before Tang Dynasty, which means from 7th century onward, at least from Tang Dynasty, 7th century onward, they were in China for sure. Because before that, we had assumption Jews may come to China earlier in biblical time or Talmudic period. But those we don't have solid evidence to prove their very existence in Chinese territory. But since Tang Dynasty, we do have evidence. That's why we talk about the beginning of Jewish diaspora in China with evidence. We started from Tang, from 7th century on. So Kaifeng Jews came into picture because Kaifeng Jewry had solid evidence to prove their very existence. It is unanimously agreed, and the Kaifeng Jewish community was established in Song Dynasty, roughly speaking, around 11th century. So they were there. And then since they established a community and live among Chinese, they never left. Though their number changed dramatically from time to time, and the city itself suffered from time to time, but Jewish community always exists until 19th century. You see, and then so that's about 700 years. From middle of 18th century to middle of 19th century, China was a closed society. No details, any report about Kaifeng Jews. But once Chinese door was opened by Western powers, and those missionaries in particular, or some Jewish people, never forgot Kaifeng Jews. Whenever possible, they start to send people there to see what happened. So actually, a report available today was written in 1850, was tell us what happened. And part of the finding were published in a newspaper in Shanghai with some pictures. So today we could see Kaifeng Jews who were pictures. Those pictures was published in 1850 in Shanghai as a result of the visit of those Jesuits. Actually, this time were Chinese Christians was sent by missionary to Kaifeng City from Shanghai to visit them. So that's how it comes. And then, of course, since Opium War 1840, China's door was opened again by force. And of course, those Western people want to do business, not really occupy the China. But when they came, and then many Jews, you could imagine, also came, because at that time, Jews already become the part of the international trading groups. And so they came to China looking for opportunities, and especially in Chinese cities, first Hong Kong, then Shanghai, Tianjin. Of course, at the end of 19th century, beginning of 20th century, there were many Jews who came to China from Russia because of pogroms. As we sometimes said, over 2 million people crossed Atlantic after pogroms in 1881 to America. But a few, sometimes I said, maybe because of persecution, lost their heads and lost their sense of direction. They should go westernward, but instead they went easternward. So we end up in China. So that's what Harbin Jews established. Harbin Jews, the beginning of Harbin Jews is very, very clear. We have a document to say it is 1898, where Jews set up foot in Harbin. Then finally, very fast in 30 years, established the largest Jewish community in not only in China, but also in Far East at that time.
And how large is that, about how many Jews?
Those about 15,000.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the largest number. At that time, there were, Harbin, Northeast China, become the hub for Ashkenazi Jews. By 1900, there were very well-established Jewish community established in Shanghai. It was the first time when Jews in Shanghai, at that time Chinese, especially those had contact with them, knows they are Jews. For instance, Hadun, one of the well-known figures, besides Sesong, Hadun, Kotori, all these Ezra and Solomon, all those families originated from Iraq, was there. And so they established their business. And but Chinese knows, for instance, Hadun, who came to China when he was in his 20s with, it is said, with $10 in his pocket. Then he first worked with Sesong family, a company. then established his own business. He becomes the most wealthy individuals because he never had other Jews work with him, but he established himself, and he later on was developed real estate, and the real in Shanghai has a lot to do with Hadoons. For instance, those who've been to China, Nanjing Road, the #1 commercial street, was first built by him. And also there's a synagogue we call Ohel Aharon, were actually donated by him. He gave the money and established, but later on, Ohel Aharon became the place where new Yeshiva, the Jewish refugees who came from Eastern Europe to Japan, to China, those new Yeshiva faculty and students were considered Jewish refugees, actually. They end up in Shanghai before Pacific War broke out. Because after Pacific War broke out, it couldn't travel to China by sea. But before that, they moved to Shanghai. And they used that place to study. You see, for almost 8 years before they were able to immigrate to United States or to Israel. Mir yeshivas actually today still exist. You see, in Israel, it's much bigger institute. I was there for a visit. Thousands of people, students, and also they were also in United States. Maybe still Mir Yeshiva has a lot of faculties, people, students, former students were there. So that's Hadoon's role. So those people. And then China in the 20th century changed. Japan had kept an eye on Chinese territory. That's why they first occupied Northeast China. That's where Harbin located. So many Jews start to leave Harbin to go down China. When they're to north to go down, they're first to Tianjin. Tianjin is become the city. Most Jews, by the way, the highest number of Tianjin Jews was 25,000 probably. Oh, no, 2,500. 2,500. Yes, Harbin was like 25,000. You see, the Jews were, most of them were not directly arrived from abroad, but rather from Harbin. You see, so those same connections. We have many friends who said they have two homes, one in Harbin, the other in Tianjin. And Tianjin become port city for them to do business, especially if you trade firms. That's one of the major commodities. So those people use Tianjin port city to ship their product to Paris and New York and Europe and the other Europe countries. You see, and also there were also Jews from Harbin who stopped. Some stopped, I said, settled down in Tianjin, but more went further south to Shanghai. So then Shanghai established second Jewish community. We call it Ashkenazi Jewish community. The two know each other. They have some connection to business probably, but still separate themselves in their everyday life. And then we come to the third group of Jews who that's actually our topic was the Jewish refugees from Central Europe. They started basically from the time Hitler came to power, 1933. You see, those who today we call Jewish refugees, but basically was from Germany and Austria. Especially, of course, large number of people who came to China was people are very much interested in learning more about, if we use the term Jewish refugees, chiefly refer to Jews who came directly from Austria from 1937. after Crystal Night, the Jews want to go, and Shanghai becomes one of the major destination. And by count, over 20,000 Jews came to China within 3 years, from 1937 to 1939, end of 1939. 1940, almost a very few were able to come to China. So that's
during the 1930s, the Jews that were coming from Germany were coming to China because it was easier for them to get here, to get to China, than to go to other countries. Is that right? That because of the visa situation, they were able to come to China more easily?
Yeah, that's actually we said in 1933, after Hitler come to power, many Jews start to leave Germany. There were Jews who leave Germany, Berlin, some other cities to Shanghai. Those people were by choice, and they got visa. The Chinese government at that time issued visa to professionals. If you're a doctor, lawyer, musician, teacher, engineer, they give you visa. There were probably over 100 things like that they came to. Though later on we consider them Jewish refugees, but that was they came. But basically, when we talk about Jewish refugees, was from Austria after Crystal Night, and Jews, as we know, couldn't get visa. They desperately want to leave the occupied German-occupied Austria, but they need a visa. But very few countries give visa for Jews, and then people realize there's one choice. Shanghai, China is an open city. In fact, you don't need a visa. In fact, many got a visa did not come to China because the function of the visa for them to take out their family members, especially the husband, the man who was concentrated, put into the concentration camp, and make possible for them to leave the country. So if you could go to third country, you leave. At that time, that's Nazi's policy. And for China, but there were a lot of people who later on, most people learned actually, go to China, you don't really need visa. If you can afford to buy a ticket of the ocean-going ship, you'll be there. You see, so a lot of people.
I'm trying to imagine that these Ashkenazi Jews from Europe that were speaking German or French get on an ocean liner and some weeks later show up in Shanghai, where they don't speak the language and all the customs are very different, and they arrive and they're happy that they're not still in Europe, but how do they make a life then in Shanghai? What happens to them? Where do they live, and how do they get along?
That's the issue. Actually, those Jewish refugees who wanted to leave German occupation was desperately want to go. So they don't really choose destination. Whenever possible, they could go. That finally, especially in 1938, they really no choice. Actually, most Jews who came to China, as I said, not by choice, but by no choice. And many of them did not know China at all. And if you show the globe and where Shanghai is, nobody could tell you where Shanghai is, but they still went. You know, I did research in Europe. I got a book in Yiddish. It called about China. It is considered the last Yiddish book published by Evil Institute before they shut their door, moved to United States. That book tells us, because people know Jews had their choice and or destination for China, but they knew very little. So Evil Institute provide information, print that book before they close their office. You see, that's so people knew very little. Later on, a lot of refugees published memoir to say they had no idea. But they heard Shanghai was a Western city. And there was stories that when the ocean liner approached to Shanghai, and then in front of they see the Shanghai, the moon, they were overjoyed. Oh, the skyline like Western, you see. But they left too early. Now, after they landed, they were brought there. They realized as another world, indeed. And when they came, China was a difficult time, and those refugees don't really have much money with them, and they need support and where to put them. And as we mentioned already, 2 Jewish communities exist in Shanghai. They helped. Actually, they do help. They provide shelter, and who first arrived to move there, I showed the picture. They have a room with 200 beds, for those people temporarily. Then they had to move to some places. That's why they went to Hangzhou. Why Hangzhou? Hangzhou is a part of the Shanghai district. At that time, it's not under British rules. Or there was a British concession, French concession, which was by then well developed. What we saw Shanghai in the 20s, 30s was there. If those refugees first arrived, saw them, but then they put that would become the most expensive area of Shanghai. You see, like Manhattan, for Jewish refugees, how could they afford it? So they were helped to settle down in Hangzhou by and large. That's one of the poorest. When the poor, the living cost is very low. You see, so that area and then some housing available, and they don't speak language, but they realized those refugees didn't have any choice. They tried to make a living. They wrote many story little memoir to say how they make few dollars, how they to survive, and of course there were Jewish organization like Joins Distribution Committee, and gave them money, and for many years, and then also other Jews who established themselves in Shanghai helped. You see, sheltered the rent for them, and they established schools, like cultural schools for the children to go to school, and for instance. But of course, life was hard. It's hard. That's why, answer the question, when the Second World War ended in Shanghai in 1945, and Jewish refugees who considered last group of Jews came to China during that period of time, left first. Whenever possible, the first to leave. Some tried to do something and learn Chinese and a little bit Shanghai dialect. And when you live in that environment or language environment, you pick up language, especially children. You see, that's how they come. But certainly that's culture, life is totally different. And then when they could choose, they start to live. That's how it happens. From 1850 to 1950, 100 years, over 40,000 Jews came to China.
Wow.
We said 15,000 in Harbin, and in Shanghai, 5,000 in Tianjin, and in Shanghai, there's refugees about 20,000, just other people, like about 25 Jews altogether to 30,000 Jews in Shanghai. But they mostly lived.
Right. Well, thank you. We are running out of time.
Yeah, I'm sorry about it.
No. I learned so much from you, Professor, and I'm sure that our audience did as well. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your passion and your wisdom with us today. I want to thank our audience and invite everyone to tune in next month when we travel to France, and we will be learning about a town in France that saved thousands of Jews during the Holocaust. The Fish Center at Yeshiva University offers a master's degree in Holocaust and Genocide Studies, and we're going to hear a little more about that right now.
If there's truth to the saying that history repeats itself, then Holocaust remembrance and the study of genocide is not only a vital part of history, but also a crucial warning for the future.
Confronting Holocaust deniers and distorters is one of the most important tasks of our generation.
The Fish Center at Yeshiva University was founded with this mission of preserving the history of the Holocaust as well as more recent genocides. Our master's program offers a unique investigation of the Holocaust of European Jewry with an interdisciplinary approach through the lenses of law, social work, history, theology, education, literature, and political science. If this sounds like a path you would like to pursue, apply now or learn more. I'd like to extend an invitation for you to join us and become a member of our growing community of scholars and educators.
And I'd like to thank Hodiah Blau, our program coordinator, and Dr. Shai Pilnick, the director of the Fish Center. And I'd also like to thank all of our community sponsors. The Holocaust and Human Rights Education Center in White Plains, the Center for Holocaust Education of East Valley JCC in Arizona, 3GNY, the Florida Holocaust Museum, the Rabbi Arthur Schneier Program for International Affairs at Yeshiva University, Shadowlight, Manhattan College Holocaust Genocide and Interfaith Education Center, the San Antonio Holocaust Museum, SOSUA 75, Johannesburg Holocaust and Genocide Center, 2 programs at the University of Miami, the Illinois Holocaust Museum, the Holocaust Education Center in Fukuyama, Japan, the Sister Rose Thering Fund for Education in Jewish Christian Studies, Lake District Holocaust Project, Jewish Gen, the Nancy and David Wolf Holocaust and Humanities Center, and the Holocaust Education Resource Center in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Thank you for inviting me.
Have a wonderful day. Thank
Okay,
you.
you too. Thanks. Good luck with your project.